The village of Lestino awoke to an eerie calm the next morning. The dense fog clung to the ground like a shroud, muffling the sounds of the waking world. The villagers emerged from their homes cautiously, whispering among themselves about the strange light that had pierced the night and the silence that followed. Boyan and Simeon walked through the village, their presence reassuring, but their expressions grim. They had to reassure the villagers, but they also needed to understand the new darkness that loomed over them. Boyan could still feel the residue of the battle in his bones. The memory of Demonet's malevolent eyes and the mysterious figure that had watched them sent shivers down his spine. He felt a gnawing unease, a sense that their victory was merely a prelude to something far more sinister. As they approached the central square, the village elder, a wizened woman named Marta, stepped forward. Her eyes, clouded with age but still sharp, bore into Simeon's. "What happened last night?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and hope. Simeon looked around at the gathered villagers, their faces etched with worrying. "We confronted Demonet," he began, his voice carrying the weight of the night's events. "Boyan fought bravely, and with the aid of a powerful relic, we were able to banish him." A murmur spread through the crowd, a mixture of relief and disbelief. Marta narrowed her eyes. "A relic? What kind of relic could wield such power?" Simeon hesitated, glancing at Boyan before continuing. "It was a staff, imbued with ancient magic. But this victory comes at a cost. The power we witnessed last night is not from our world. It's a force that we barely comprehend, and it's not entirely under our control." Boyan stepped forward, his voice firm. "We must remain vigilant. Demonet's defeat may have unleashed something even more dangerous. We need to be prepared for whatever comes next." The villagers nodded, their fear giving way to determination. They had faced countless hardships, and they knew that their survival depended on their unity and resilience. As the crowd dispersed, Marta pulled Boyan and Simeon aside. "There's more to this, isn't there?" she asked, her eyes searching theirs. Simeon nodded slowly. "Yes, there was a figure in the shadows, watching us. I believe it may be connected to the greater evil we sensed." Marta's face paled. "The old legends speak of a darkness that dwells in these woods, an ancient evil that predates even Demonet. If this figure is tied to that darkness, we are all in grave danger." Boyan clenched his fists, the weight of their predicament settling heavily on his shoulders. "We need to find out who or what that figure is, and we need to understand the true nature of the staff's power." Marta nodded. "There are old texts, hidden in the catacombs beneath the church. They might hold the answers we seek." Simeon placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll need your guidance, Marta. Your knowledge of the old ways could be the key to unraveling this mystery." The trio made their way to the church, its stone walls standing as a silent sentinel over the village. They descended into the catacombs, the air growing colder and the darkness more oppressive with each step. Marta led them to a hidden chamber, its entrance concealed behind a tapestry depicting a battle between light and shadow. Inside, the walls were lined with ancient tomes and scrolls, their pages yellowed with age. Marta selected a few volumes, spreading them out on a stone table. These texts speak of the old gods, the forces of nature that once ruled this land. They might give us insight into the power of the staff and the identity of the shadowy figure. As they pored over the texts, a chilling realization began to dawn. The staff was not merely a weapon, it was a conduit for an ancient power, a fragment of a long-forgotten deity. The figure in the shadows was a guardian of this power, bound to it for eternity. Boyan's heart raced as he read the descriptions of the deity, an entity known as Morana, the goddess of death and winter. She was a being of immense power, capable of bending the natural world to her will. The staff was a fragment of her essence, a tool that could either protect or destroy, depending on the wielder's intent. Simeon looked up from the text, his face pale. "If Morana's essence has been awakened, we are facing a threat far greater than Demonet. We need to find a way to control this power, or it will consume us all." Marta nodded, her expression grim. "There is a ritual, an ancient binding spell that could seal Morana's power within the staff. But it's dangerous, and it requires a sacrifice." Boyan met her gaze, his resolve hardening. "What kind of sacrifice?" Marta hesitated, then spoke softly. "A life must be willingly given to bind the power. The person who makes the sacrifice will become the guardian, forever bound to protect the staff and its power." The weight of her words hung in the air, the enormity of the decision pressing down on them. Boyan looked at his father, seeing the same determination in his eyes. They both knew what needed to be done, but the cost was almost too great to bear. Simeon placed a hand on Boyan's shoulder. "We will face this together, but the decision must be yours, my son." Boyan took a deep breath, the enormity of the choice settling in his heart. He knew what he had to do, but the fear of leaving his father and the village unprotected gnawed at him. Yet, he also knew that this was the only way to ensure their survival. "I'll do it," Boyan said, his voice steady despite the turmoil within him. "I'll become the guardian." Marta nodded, her eyes filled with sorrow and pride. "We will prepare the ritual. It must be done under the full moon, in the heart of the forest." As the days passed, the villagers rallied around Boyan, offering their support and gratitude. The night of the full moon arrived, casting an eerie glow over the forest. Boyan, Simeon, and Marta made their way to the sacred grove, the villagers following at a distance, their faces lit by the flickering light of torches. In the center of the grove, an ancient stone altar stood, covered in moss and engraved with runes. Boyan stepped forward, the staff in his hand glowing faintly with Morena's power. Marta began the incantation, her voice rising and falling in a haunting melody. The air grew thick with energy, the runes on the altar glowing with an otherworldly light. Boyan placed the staff on the altar, his heart pounding in his chest. As the ritual reached its climax, he felt a surge of power flow through him, a connection to something ancient and eternal. With a final, resounding chant, Marta completed the ritual. A blinding light enveloped Boyan, lifting him off the ground as the power of Morena coursed through him. He felt his body change, his senses sharpening, his mind expanding. He was no longer just a man, he was the guardian, bound to protect the staff and its power for eternity. As the light faded, Boyan stood before the altar, transformed. His eyes glowed with a fierce light, his body emanating a powerful aura. He felt the weight of his new role, but also a sense of purpose and strength. Simeon approached, his eyes filled with pride and sorrow. "You have done what needed to be done, my son. You are our protector now." Boyan nodded, embracing his father one last time. "I will watch over you all. The darkness will not prevail." As the villagers returned to their homes, the forest seemed to hold its breath, the ancient power of Morena now bound to a new guardian. But in the deepest shadows, the figure that had watched them stirred, its eyes gleaming with a malevolent intelligence. The battle was far from over, and a new chapter in the legend of Lestino was just beginning. The true extent of Morena's power and the identity of the shadowy figure would be revealed in time, and Boyan's resolve would be tested in ways he could never have imagined. The villagers slept uneasily that night, their dreams filled with visions of light and darkness, of a future fraught with danger and hope. And somewhere, deep within the forest, an ancient evil plotted its next move, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Boyan stood in the heart of the forest, feeling the power of Morena coursing through his veins. The staff, now a part of him, pulsed with an ancient energy, its glow reflecting in his eyes. The transformation had been complete, but the weight of his new role as the guardian bore heavily on him. He could feel the forest around him. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of the wind, connected to his very soul. Simeon watched his son with a mixture of pride and sorrow. The villagers had returned to their homes, their faith in Boyan's new role providing them with a sliver of hope amidst their fear. But Simeon knew that the true test was yet to come. The shadowy figure that had watched them during the battle with Deminet was still out there, and its intentions were far from benign. Boyan, feeling the urgency of the situation, decided to explore the depths of the forest, hoping to uncover more about the figure and its connection to Morena. As he moved through the trees, he could sense the life around him in a way he never had before. The forest was alive with secrets, and he intended to uncover every one of them. Deep in the heart of the forest, Boyan discovered an ancient ruin, hidden beneath a canopy of twisted branches and thick undergrowth. The structure was old, its stones covered in moss and engraved with runes similar to those on the altar. Boyan felt a pull towards it, an instinctive knowledge that this place held answers. As he stepped into the ruin, a chill ran down his spine. The air here was different, charged with an otherworldly energy. In the center of the ruin was a stone pedestal, and atop it lay a book bound in dark leather. Boyan approached cautiously, sensing the immense power emanating from it. He picked up the book, its pages worn and yellowed with age, and began to read. The book was a grimoire, detailing the history of Morena and her guardians. It spoke of an ancient order, the Vikod, who had dedicated their lives to protecting the balance between light and darkness. Each guardian was chosen for their strength and purity of heart, but the power they wielded came at a cost. The grimoire also mentioned a prophecy, one that foretold the rise of a new evil that would challenge the very fabric of their world. Boyan's heart raced as he read the final passage. The true guardian shall face the ultimate test, a trial by darkness. Only through sacrifice and unwavering resolve can the balance be restored. As he pondered these words, Boyan felt a presence behind him. He turned quickly, his senses on high alert. Standing in the entrance of the ruin was the shadowy figure, its eyes gleaming with a malevolent light. The figure stepped forward, its form shifting and flickering as if it were made of the very shadows that surrounded them. "Who are you?" Boyan demanded, gripping the staff tightly. The figure's voice was a low, hissing whisper. "I am the harbinger of the darkness, the keeper of secrets. You, Boyan, are the chosen guardian, but your power is not yet complete." Boyan narrowed his eyes. "What do you want?" The figure smiled, a sinister curve of its lips. "I want what is rightfully mine. The power of Morena belongs to the darkness, and you are but a vessel. Embrace the shadow within, and you will see the true extent of your power." Boyan felt a surge of anger and defiance. "I will never surrender to the darkness. I will protect my people and uphold the balance." The figure laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. "We shall see, Guardian. The time will come when you must choose. Until then, I will be watching." With that, the figure dissolved into the shadows, leaving Boyan alone in the ruin. He knew that this was only the beginning of his journey, and that the true test lay ahead. He returned to the village, the grimoire clutched tightly in his hand, determined to prepare for the trials to come. As days turned into weeks, Boyan trained tirelessly, honing his newfound abilities and learning from the grimoire. Simeon and Marta aided him, their combined knowledge and experience proving invaluable. The villagers, too, rallied around Boyan, their faith in him unwavering. But the nights grew longer and colder, a tangible sign of the encroaching darkness. Strange occurrences began to plague the village, livestock disappearing, eerie howls echoing through the night, and an uncheckable feeling of being watched. Boyan could sense the malevolent presence growing stronger, its influence seeping into the very fabric of their world. One night, as the full moon cast an eerie glow over the village, Boyan felt a sudden, intense pull towards the forest. He knew that something had changed, that the time for the ultimate test was drawing near. He gathered his courage and, with Simeon and Marta by his side, ventured once more into the heart of the forest. As they approached the ancient ruin, the air crackled with energy. The shadowy figure stood waiting, its form more solid and menacing than before. "Welcome, Guardian," it hissed. "The time has come to face your destiny." Boyan stepped forward, his resolve unshaken. "I will not let you destroy my home. The power of Morena will not be yours." The figure's eyes glowed with a sinister light. "Very well. Let the trial begin." The ground trembled as dark tendrils of shadow erupted from the earth, wrapping around Boyan, Simeon, and Marta. The forest seemed to warp and twist around them, the boundaries between reality and nightmare blurring. Boyan felt the weight of the shadows pressing down on him, trying to suffocate his spirit. But within him burned the light of Morena's power. He focused on the staff, feeling its energy flow through him, pushing back the darkness. He could hear Simeon and Marta chanting, their voices merging with his own, creating a barrier of light. The figure watched, its expression unreadable. "You cannot hold out forever, Guardian. The darkness is eternal." Boyan gritted his teeth, pushing against the overwhelming force. He could feel his strength waning, but he refused to give in. "Light will always find a way," he whispered, his voice filled with determination. As the struggle reached its climax, Boyan felt a surge of power from the staff. The runes on its surface glowed brighter, and the light within him expanded, engulfing the shadows. The tendrils recoiled, the dark figure's form flickering and weakening. With a final, desperate push, Boyan unleashed the full power of the staff. The light exploded outward, banishing the darkness and driving the figure back into the shadows. The forest returned to its natural state, the air clear and still. Boyan collapsed to the ground, exhausted but victorious. Simeon and Marta rushed to his side, their faces filled with relief. "You did it, my son," Simeon said, pride evident in his voice. Boyan nodded weakly, his strength slowly returning. The darkness is not gone. It will always be a part of our world, but we have the power to keep it at bay. Marta helped him to his feet. And you, Boyan, are the guardian who will ensure that balance is maintained. As they made their way back to the village, Boyan knew that the trials were far from over. The shadowy figure had been driven back, but it would return. He would need to remain vigilant, ever ready to protect his people and uphold the balance between light and darkness. The legend of Boyan, the guardian of Lestino, would be told for generations, a beacon of hope in a world where shadows lurked ever on the edge of the light. And in the deepest corners of the forest, the ancient evil bided its time, waiting for the perfect moment to challenge the guardian once more. But Boyan, with the strength of Morana's power and the support of his people, stood ready to face whatever darkness the future held. The village of Lestino basked in a brief period of peace following Boyan's victory over the darkness. His presence, infused with Morana's power, served as a bulwark against the ever-encroaching shadows. Yet, in his heart, Boyan knew this tranquility was fragile, a mere interlude before the next storm. Weeks turned into months, and the full moon once again rose over the Rhodope Mountains, casting a silver pallor over the village. The nights grew longer and colder, and the sense of an impending calamity hung heavy in the air. The villagers clung to their routines, but an undercurrent of fear permeated their lives. Boyan continued his training, pushing himself to the limits of his abilities. Simeon and Marta, his steadfast allies, helped him delve deeper into the secrets of the grimoire. They unearthed rituals and spells long forgotten, hoping to fortify Boyan's defenses against the encroaching darkness. One fateful night, as Boyan patrolled the outskirts of the village, he felt a familiar, sinister presence. The air grew thick, and the shadows seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. His heart pounded as he realized that the shadowy figure had returned, stronger and more determined than before. He raced back to the village, finding Simeon and Marta waiting for him in the central square. Their faces mirrored his own dread. "It's here," Boyan said, his voice a strained whisper. Simeon nodded grimly. "We must face it together. This will be our final stand." Marta held up the grimoire, open to a page detailing an ancient binding ritual. "This spell can trap the darkness, but it requires the ultimate sacrifice." Boyan's eyes widened in horror. "No, I can't ask you to do that." Marta shook her head. "It is not our place to decide, Boyan. The guardian's sacrifice must come from the heart." The ground trembled as the shadowy figure materialized at the edge of the square, its form towering and insidious. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and a chilling laugh echoed through the village. "You cannot escape destiny, guardian. The time has come to embrace the darkness." Boyan stepped forward, his grip on the staff tightening. "I will never yield to you." The figure advanced, its shadowy tendrils reaching out to envelop Boyan. He summoned all his strength, the light of Morana's power blazing from the staff. The two forces collided, creating a maelstrom of light and shadow that shook the very foundations of the village. As Boyan struggled against the darkness, Simeon and Marta began the binding ritual, their voices rising in a desperate chant. The air crackled with energy, the runes on the grimoire glowing with a fierce light. But the shadowy figure's power was overwhelming, its presence suffocating. Boyan could feel his strength waning, the darkness pressing in on him from all sides. He realized with a sinking heart that he could not defeat this evil alone. With a final, desperate plea, he turned to his father. "Simeon, protect the village. Finish the ritual." Simeon's eyes filled with tears, but he nodded resolutely. "I will, my son. Your sacrifice will not be in vain." Boyan steeled himself, knowing what he had to do. He stepped into the center of the maelstrom, the staff held high. With a cry of defiance, he plunged the staff into the ground, channeling all of Morana's power into a blinding light that engulfed the village. The light intensified, driving back the darkness and trapping the shadowy figure within its radiant grasp. Boyan felt his body being torn apart, his essence merging with the light, becoming one with the power he had sworn to protect. Simeon and Marta completed the ritual, their voices breaking as they uttered the final incantation. The light flared one last time, then faded, leaving a profound silence in its wake. The villagers emerged from their homes, their faces etched with sorrow and awe. The shadowy figure was gone, banished by Boyan's sacrifice. But the cost had been unbearably high. Simeon knelt by the spot where Boyan had stood, his tears falling freely. Marta placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, her own eyes brimming with grief. "He saved us all," she whispered. "His sacrifice ensured our survival." The village of Lestino mourned their hero, their guardian, who had given everything to protect them. They erected a monument in the central square, a tribute to Boyan's bravery and selflessness. The staff, now devoid of its power, was placed at the heart of the monument, a symbol of the light that had once shone so brightly. Years passed, and the legend of Boyan, the guardian of Lestino, became a tale told to children, a story of courage and sacrifice. The forest remained, its shadows held at bay by the memory of the hero who had given his life to preserve the balance between light and darkness. Yet, in the deepest corners of the forest, the ancient evil lay dormant, waiting for the perfect moment to challenge the world once more. The cycle of light and shadow, of hope and despair, would continue. And the villagers of Lestino, forever grateful for Boyan's sacrifice, would remain vigilant, ready to face whatever darkness the future held. As the moon rose high over the Rhodope Mountains, its light cast a solemn glow over the village. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a promise. The guardian spirit would always watch over them, a beacon of hope in the endless night.